Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Cedar Point Recreation Park. As always, we're cranking away at some ride station buildings. Today we're heading all the way back to the front of the park for one of our first builds, and that is Blue Streak. A relatively simple build, which is nice because we've had a lot of challenges lately. So I'm glad to get something down that's a little bit easier. Of course, that isn't to say that Blue Streak doesn't have its own challenges. The layout isn't perfect for RCT. We have the diagonal brake run area with its little roof that is not terribly easy to do in RCT if you don't make it orthogonal. I've made mine diagonal here because I think it fits the best. And I decided to just go with some trackatexture roof. I'm not a huge fan of how it turned out, but I think it looks okay. I think it's going to be good enough for now. And for once, we aren't doing a trackatexture roof. Instead, we're using plain old regular scenery. Give it a little bit of an old school look to go with an old school coaster. I felt it was kind of appropriate. And it actually does look a little bit more like the real thing. It's not perfect, of course, but I think considering what we have to work with, it's not too shabby. The station here is relatively simple, just another rectangular box with some different layers of color going on. Not a whole lot going on here, so it was nice to get something down that I didn't have to think too hard about. One thing that frustrated me a little bit was I realized as I was building that I actually made the coaster too high off the ground. Not the first time that we've had this problem. But if you look at some off-rides or POVs of Blue Streak, you'll notice that the turnaround before the lift is basically right on the ground and actually kind of sunk in a little bit. Didn't quite work out to recreate that exactly. I do have my build lifted off the ground a little bit because we still needed to have some room for the queue to go underneath it behind the station. And if the ride was right on the ground, there wouldn't be enough clearance for that to happen. So it isn't quite exactly flush with the ground, but I feel like we got kind of the best of both worlds here with it close to the ground, but we still have enough room for the queue to go where it needs to go. And the trees are going to hide things well enough anyway, so I feel like it's not really much of a loss. One fun detail that I added in here that I don't have on any of my other rides yet is the chain. You'll notice on certain coasters, old and new, that a lot of times the chain will hang considerably lower than the track on its return. So I decided to recreate that here with a little bit of single rail coaster. Went through a couple iterations to get something that looks pretty decent. I think what we wound up with at the end of the episode looks pretty good. It's a nice little detail that I quite enjoy. I'm gonna have to look back at some of our roller coasters that we've done already and see if there are any other places where that might be something that we can include. I think Corkscrew might be one of those. I'll have to go back and check it. But I always like putting in those little details, a little bit of extra infrastructure, maintenance kind of stuff. The little shed underneath the lift hill that the chain returns to gives it a little bit of extra charm, and I really like that a lot. I think it turned out pretty good. I also looked a little bit at some of our roads back here that go around where the main road is and some of our side roads, maintenance roads. The actual scenery that goes around these is going to come in the next phase, but I do still want to try to get these down where I can, just so we have a better idea of where things are going to go as we build these rides out. Making sure that everything still lines up nicely with the rides and with all the park layout. So far, so good. Haven't run into any major issues yet with this. A couple minor things, like some things being a little bit spread out. For example, the little maintenance building behind the pavilion that we built way back in episode 4 is a little bit far away from the road compared to in real life. Not a huge deal. Just got to keep that in mind when we do some decorating. We'll have to just add a little bit extra stuff in there to make things look interesting. And like we did with Gemini in last episode, spent some time adding some custom footers to this coaster. Want to give a big shout out to Sadret's Scenery Manager plugin. Made this a lot easier than it normally is to just go ahead and copy and paste a bunch of footers in. Still had to do a little bit of tile inspector manipulation so that everything was drawn correctly in the end, but having this tool made putting all those footers in go a lot faster than it normally does, so really appreciate that we have that capability now. But that's about all we have going on over here. Not a huge build, but an important one. And as always, it's nice to see some more of these little details get filled out. I'm looking forward to putting in more of this stuff here. The front of the park is starting to shape up a lot as we do more of these buildings. I think I might stick around here in the near future and do some Raptor or Midway or something to help flesh this out even more, because I like the way it's coming up so far. But we're going to call it there for today. As always, if you've got any comments, questions, suggestions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.